Hey there, I'm Lindsay Dreyer, host of the Joyfulpreneur podcast, where I share tips, tricks, and strategies to help women entrepreneurs maximize joy and freedom in their lives and businesses. Let's dive into today's episode. Colie James joins me on today's episode. Colie is a Disney-loving family filmmaker, workflow and automations guru, and the host of the Business First Creatives podcast. I am obsessed with her motto, if it does not bring you joy, automate that ish. Let's get into it. Colie James!
Hi!
Oh, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. You go to Disneyland every single month, which sounds like a dream. And I'm curious to know, how did you become an entrepreneur and get to this point in your life where you have this immense freedom?
So I like to say that I am constantly a recovering workaholic. I spent my 20s, I married young. I graduated high school a year early. I graduated college. I did 2 years of a graduate program. And then we moved to Michigan, where I was in grad school, teaching college level classes, and working on my PhD all at the same time.
Oh,
so
girl.
When I say that I had like 70-hour work weeks, I mean, that's not an exaggeration. I worked nonstop. I made a shit ton of money. But I didn't have any kids. Like, we were trying. I struggled with infertility all of my 20s. And so finally, when I hit 30, it was like everything came together. I was tired of working. My husband and I moved to Colorado, where I knew that I was not going to find a job easily teaching, because there just aren't that many university and colleges here in Colorado. And so I told him, I'm going to be a stay-at-home wife for a little while until I become a stay-at-home mom for a little while. And I don't think anybody really thought that I wasn't going to go back to work. I mean, I told my mom, and my mom was like, okay, so like you're going to take off a year or two. Okay. Well, I mean, 14 years later, I still haven't returned to the classroom. So we came here, and like, I just want to say, like, my entire life changed. My marriage got so much better. We finally started fertility treatments, and we got pregnant within that first year.
Aww.
We bought our first house. I mean, everything happened the year that I turned 30, and it was the most amazing year. But so how I got to entrepreneurship from all of that workaholicness from my 20s was, we were here, and I finally got pregnant, and I was still doing some online teaching, but then I had some pretty severe complications in my pregnancy, which landed me in hospital bed rest for 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And we were told we were going to have a preemie. And then things just turned around. I got better. My water resealed. Like, it was a lot of things. And so they were like, okay, we're going to let you go home. And I was like, no, I really dig the comfort of this hospital room. I don't want to leave. And my husband was like, we're going home. Because mind you, he had been sleeping on a hospital couch for 6 weeks.
Oh.
Because they just kept telling us, you're going to have a baby any day now.
And those are not comfortable.
Those
are not comfortable at all.
So they sent me home. And instead of delivering at 34 weeks, I went another 5 weeks. Like, I didn't deliver her until I was almost 39 weeks.
Way to go.
Yeah, I'm very proud of that, but it was also very stressful. I quit all my jobs the week that I landed in the hospital. I was like, hey, I can't teach. Like, I'm going to have a baby soon if she makes it that long. I mean, it was really traumatic time. But so fast forward, I actually have a kid now. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going back to work. Like, we were pretty certain after all the trouble that we had, she was going to be our only kid. And so I was like, I don't want to waste these first years, working, putting her in daycare like that. No. So I nannied for a little while just so that my kid could have, a playmate.
Right.
And then when we decided to put our kids in preschool, I was like, okay, now what do? I was like, do I really try to find a teaching job? Nope. I don't want to work that much anymore. Nope. So I started looking at opening like my own daycare because I love kids. And then I thought about a real estate license, but I really loved photography. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, I was like, well, maybe I try and make this a business. So that is how Colie James Photography got started way back in 2011 and 2012, was my absolute refusal to go back into the classroom and like, what else can I possibly do to make money at this point in time?
You have a common thread with a lot of people I talk to, which is you reach a point of burnout or workaholism where you just cannot do it anymore and you have to find another way. And I really think the other way is so often entrepreneurship. Like because you can control it. You can make it what you need it to be. It can be flexible. So it sounds like it was exactly what you needed and what you wanted. And it's led you to here today, which is amazing.
I mean, I will also say, if you care about Enneagrams, I'm an 8 and 3 is like right up under there. So I'm a challenger. I don't do well with bosses. I don't do well with people telling me what to do with my time. So I think entrepreneurship is also like me taking control and being able to do what I want and like taking responsibility. If something works really well, yay me. If something sucks, it's still on me. I mean, I really value that in entrepreneurship.
All right, Enneagram 8. Okay, so let's dive into how you define success. What does success mean to Colie James?
So I think success has meant the exact same thing the entire time that I've been an entrepreneur. And that was to be able to make money and not sacrifice my personal life. Because like I said, like we were only going to have the one kid. So even when I put her in preschool, she was only there 2 mornings a week. So I had to figure out a way to make money and still have my kid with me the rest of the time. I mean, we ramped it up. It was 2 mornings a week, and then it was 3 full days, and then it was 3 full days and an afternoon. But the entire time I built my photography business, it was centered around being able to be at home with my child first, and then figuring out a way to like continue to grow the business in the time that I had, instead of letting that time overshadow my time with Chloe. Because like and for a very long time, Lindsay, I associated making a lot of money with a lot of time into whatever it is that you call work. And so for like the first 7 years of my business, I think I was very scared to start making like a ton of money, because all I could remember was how burnt out I was in my 20s when I was making a ton of money, but I was also working way more than any normal human should. And so like I purposefully was part-time for the first 7 years of my business because I was too worried about ramping it up and then having my personal life, I mean my marriage, and being a mother suffering in the meantime.
Did you ever have that nagging thought in the back of your head of you could be more successful, you could be doing more? Like, is that a little devil that sits on your shoulder?
It is. I mean, and once I finally hit 6 figures, I was like, I probably could have done this a lot sooner if I had just been willing to like let go of some of my money hangups, because I'm very unique in that it wasn't that I was charging pennies. Like that was never my hangup. My hangup was if I allowed myself to earn more, eventually like my personal life would disintegrate and I would get back to being in my 20s and always being tired and having absolutely no fucking boundaries about when I would work and how I would work. And so it really wasn't, honestly, the pandemic. The pandemic was my first 6-figure year. And that was because, I mean, my child was home with me the entire time. So I mean, It's a miracle that I actually ended up hitting my first 6-figure year during the pandemic when I had like no break. Like my 10-year-old at the time was here all the time, and she's 12 now. And this year I for real homeschooled her. So I have continued to maintain my business. She is going back to school next year, Lindsay. Thank you, Jesus. But that is what I call success, making money and making it on my own terms and like my own amount of time that I am willing to give my business every day, every week, every month.
I'm in the same boat as you where I made more money than any 20-year-old should have been making. And I am so grateful for that experience because I think so many people spend their entire 20s, a lot of their 30s, getting to the point where they're making what they consider to be ridiculous money. And then they realize, I just spent 15 to 20 years getting to this point and I'm not happy. Yeah, I'm not happy. this is not success. This actually is horrible. So yeah, it sounds like you have a similar trajectory where we found out money actually isn't success.
Nope.
Money is great. It provides lots of wonderful things, but it's time and freedom and the ability to choose how you live your life. I think that is so priceless.
Yeah. I mean, my 20s was nice, girl. I went on a lot of trips.
Same.
Whenever I felt like it, I have a closet. I still have a closet full of like Louis Vuitton and Coach and Gucci and a lot of brands that, I mean, I don't even use. Where would I go with that stuff at this point? But I enjoyed buying all of it in my 20s.
Oh yeah. It's wild. Like the thing that's my 20-year-old self spent money on. I chuckle a lot now.
And my 30-year-old self and my 40-year-old self spends all the money on Disney. So,
well, it sounds like, hey, if it sparks joy, that's what you should be doing with it. I think if that makes you happy, that's what you should be doing. So we may have people listening who are struggling with work taking over their life. What advice would you give to them?
So you have to start with your calendar and you have to start with boundaries. And the funny thing is, I don't really think I teach myself that. I have a really good friend, Sabrina Gebhardt. She teaches boundaries to photographers. And so every time I feel myself slipping, I just Voxer her or literally send her a FaceTime video. And I'm like, hey girl, how you doing? And like just hearing her talk puts me back in my place to where I put my boundaries back first. So, I mean, you want to make sure that you are spending time doing what actually makes you happy. And so if there are a ton of things in your business that don't make you happy, figure out a way to outsource them and not do them. The other thing that I realized was, you know, during the pandemic, again, homeschooling my kid, we ended up buying magic key passes to Disneyland when they finally reopened to out-of-state guests. I had a passport the year before that I never got to use because I bought it like literally weeks before the pandemic.
Oh my gosh.
And so Disneyland closed and then everybody got a refund like 7 months later because they still hadn't reopened. So, you know, I had this pass and I bought my daughter one and everything was cheap. Hotels were cheap, flights were cheap. You know, the pass was relatively cheap. I paid like $900 for each of us. We went every single month. But so guys, that takes a lot on your calendar. Like I have to make sure that that whole week is blocked off every single month. And so it just taught me to really pay attention to my calendar. And when someone contacted me for services, not to try to squeeze them in on their timetable. No, it's my timetable. Like, I'm sorry, I can't help you for another 6 weeks. If you want the date, here's the date. If you don't, find somebody else. I mean, just point blank. So protecting your calendar is probably the first step to creating those kind of boundaries between your work life and your business.
It also sounds like you needed an accountability coach or like a partner that is you're able when you feel yourself slipping to go to and say, I need some help. I'm slipping. I have boundary creep.
Yeah. I mean, we all talk about scope creep when it comes to our businesses, but I think some of us need to remember why we set the boundaries in the first place. And that's often why I get into trouble. It's because I forget why I created the boundary in the first place. And I'm like, oh no, I could just do this one thing. That's okay. And then of course that leads to something else, And so just recognizing that you set your boundaries for a reason and keeping them in place is the best thing that you can do for yourself.
And then you also talked about outsourcing, stop doing things that you don't like doing. So what are some examples of that in your business?
Oh my gosh, Lindsay, we could talk about this for an hour. I am obsessed with outsourcing. So the funny thing is, hello, Enneagram 8, Enneagram 3. I did not outsource anything in my business for the first 6 years. No, actually 6 years is a lie. 4 years. 4 years it took me to finally outsource something. And it wasn't until I literally went blind and could not see my computer that I finally outsourced something. And that was my photography editing. Like I literally went blind for 6 weeks and couldn't see my computer.
Oh my gosh.
So I had to pay someone to edit my images because I could not see them. And then after that, I was like, oh, this is not that bad. What else can I pay somebody for? And so at this point in my business, on the photography side, I still pay for photo editors. I still pay for a video editor. I also do things like, you know, my Dubsado, I joke around that it's like $40 a month for what I would be paying a virtual assistant $40 an hour for. That's not true, guys. My virtual assistant charges more than $40 an hour, but she is amazing. And I have been working with her since, I think I hired her in August. And so the things that Sarah takes off of my plate is she does some of the prep work for my system setup in Dubsado. She is the person that is responsible for all of the amazing social media content because I am tired of posting on Instagram. And she just does like a lot of the other back end stuff related to like marketing that I just don't want to do. And then in May, I started my podcast, Business First Creatives. And for the first 4 months, I did everything. And I think that was really useful because it helped me learn what I wanted out of my podcast, how much time it actually took to do each one. But then I hired a podcast manager, and Haley is amazing. She actually edits all of the podcast episodes, writes the show notes, publishes it on Buzzsprout. So those are all of the things that I am currently outsourcing. I mean, I'm literally doing like my setups, and then I'm recording my podcast episodes. Almost everything else in my business at this point is outsourced. Oh, I have amazing bookkeepers too. And I've had them for years. But yeah, all that stuff is outsourced.
I think that's so smart, though. That provides freedom where you can either be focusing on the things that you're really wonderful at in your business, the strategy that we liked. I'm getting tired of the term zone of genius. Honestly, I'm kind of over it at this point, but it's like whatever you love to do, like you should keep doing that probably. Yeah. So the term life first business, it has become very popular. How do you define a life first business?
I mean, I think everything that I've told you about my journey to entrepreneurship is a life first business. I mean, when it comes to my business, I don't really make business decisions without thinking about how it impacts my personal life first. Because I mean, one of the things that I didn't say, and I mean, this is really not a podcast for this, but like my 20s, I worked a lot and my marriage was really miserable. Like really, really miserable, y'all. And so once I got to my 30s, I do think that entrepreneurship helps me with my work boundaries. It also makes me have a much better marriage. I mean, he is very supportive of me being an entrepreneur. And it's really funny because now I make more money than him. It's like a running joke in this household because I made more money than him in my 20s. And then in all of my 30s, I wasn't really working, barely. And then now it's like flipped back around. But I think that making sure that I prioritize my marriage, being a mother, like my personal self-care and well-being makes me a better business owner. But that definitely comes before the business. It has to for my own sanity.
100%. And you are sacrificing earnings, like without a doubt. Like I don't know if you feel this way, but sometimes I look at the past 12 years I've had my company and I'm like, damn, my net worth would be like an additional at least $1 million plus if I had actually like not gotten married and had kids. And like, don't get me wrong, so happy I'm married. I love my husband to pieces and my kids are amazing. But it's like that path not taken of like, wow. So there's a trade-off. There's 100% a trade-off, but it's something that I feel like you consciously have to make and be so happy about it. And it goes back to the redefining of success, which is money isn't success. It's actually having a wonderful relationship with your partner, having a great relationship with your kids, loving your work, taking care of yourself. So I love that we're getting to this point in society and life where this is the message I think all of us, millennials, and I think in particular, like I'm an elder millennial, but like, I think that's what we all want. We saw our parents just work their asses off and burn out. And we're like, or we burned out ourselves because we were prescribing to like the way they did life. So, we're doing it new and fresh. And I love it.
I mean, the other thing that I really like about the fact that I'm an entrepreneur is that my daughter gets to see both sides.
Yes.
Because I mean, I was teaching mathematics and statistics, so I am a STEM person. My husband is a biochemist with a PhD. Like, if I wasn't an entrepreneur, I don't think that my daughter would see any other path other than going to school for a really fucking long time. I mean, it's funny, after the first few years of having my daughter, my mother-in-law started to like quietly ask me, well, when do you think you're going to go finish your PhD? And I was like, no, I'm done. I was done the day that I said I was done. I'm never going back. I never needed the PhD. I never wanted the PhD. I enrolled in it because my husband was getting a PhD and I just felt like I should get one too.
Right.
But I'm never going back to that. And so I really love that in my household, my daughter gets to see two people loving their job, being very successful at it, making relatively the same amount of money, but in two completely different ways, so that she sees that, it isn't all about, going to college for all these years and getting a degree and finding a job where you use your degree, because my daughter is very artistic. And so I don't know what the future holds for her, but I am certainly really glad that she can see that there is a path to where you can use your artistic abilities in order to make a living.
I have two daughters and I have a son, but I think about this all the time where we are examples for our kids. And I love being able to show them that other path too. Like, I just think it's so great to be able to show that you can do it on your own. Like, you can run your own show. Actually, I'm happy I'm showing my son this too. I don't think it's actually like sons or daughters, but I really do feel like we're changing the conversation. And I know that in the traditional workplace, there's the pay gap and there's the glass ceiling and all of that. But when you own your own business, I feel like you don't deal with a lot of that BS. Like, you're just not dealing with that as much. And so I do, and personally, it's why I opted out of the corporate track, was because there was so much patriarchy. There was so much male-dominated bullshit that I was like, I'm going to just start my own thing, because I am tired of playing by these rules that just don't apply to me.
Yes. I am with you,
So we play
girl.
by our own rules.
Yes. I mean, and my husband, he works a very traditional job. And I mean, it's funny. I don't know what your husband does or what your partner does.
He's a stay-at-home dad and a part-time professor.
Well, see, that's awesome. I feel like the nuanced conversations that we have as entrepreneurs, I can't explain to my husband, because when I tell him that I'm about to drop, $6,000 on a coaching program, he's like, what? So, I mean, in the years that I have been an entrepreneur, he has learned to just not ask any questions. And he's like, well, I mean, do you want to discuss this, or you're just telling me? I'm like, I'm just making conversation with you. You're not really the person whose opinion I value on these things. And it's not because my husband is not a very smart person. It's he doesn't understand like what it takes to actually run a business. And so I am very mindful now about who I discuss business decisions with, because you really do have to have someone that you can talk to about these things that are in the thick of entrepreneurship as well. Because people who have 9-to-5 jobs, people who are W-2 employees, they don't get it. They just don't get it.
No, they don't. And it is feast or famine. Like, and you have to be in sales. Like, that is something like if you don't have clients or you're not selling your products, like, you just aren't going to make money. And then you are going to go out of business. So it really does. It comes down to us. The buck stops with us. So
Yes.
It is scary, but it's also really empowering.
I mean, I love being in control. And what you said about sales and marketing, I mean, I think that is also kind of one of the myths, though, is that in order to be an entrepreneur, you have to be good at everything. Like, I think that when someone says they're an entrepreneur, they automatically think solopreneur. Like, they think that you have to be the person doing all the behind the scenes, all of the marketing, all of, the services and all of that. And that's why I feel so passionate about outsourcing, because while I have no doubt there are entrepreneurs out there who are solopreneurs that are making six figures and, have what they consider to be successful businesses that are thriving, I can't help but have the opinion that the more that you outsource, either the more you can scale your business or the more time that you can reclaim for yourself in order to do things with your family. Or in my case, go to Disneyland every month. There are so many things that you can do once you take things off your plate. And so that's why hiring decisions, should be such a big part of entrepreneurship, because it is hard, guys. I'm not going to tell you that hiring people and giving control over any part of your business is easy. It is 100% not. And I think that I've been really lucky. I mean, I'm on like my third or fourth personal editor for photos, but other than that, I mean, I hired one podcast manager. She's great. She's working out awesome. My virtual assistant is the same way. But just because you don't get a unicorn your first hire doesn't mean that it won't work out. It means that you probably need to learn something about yourself as an owner, as an employer. You need to learn something about your business and the things that you actually want to happen inside of it. And that will help you make a more purposeful hire the second or the third time. Like, you will have more knowledge in order to make a better job description and know what, I don't want to say personality traits, but sometimes it is personality traits, like figuring out what skill set you want to hire for. And I promise every hire that you do will get better. It will.
Absolutely. And if you are in the solopreneur boat and you are like, I can't do all of this, where do I go? Do not hire an employee first. Like, don't go out and W-2 somebody. Find a piece of your business that you can outsource on Upwork or Fiverr or whatever, and practice outsourcing. Like, I feel like it's so important to practice outsourcing when it doesn't actually matter.
And you're saying practicing outsourcing. I'm going to use a different word. I'm going to say practice delegating, because recently I had a task where if I had just done it myself, it would have taken me 30 minutes. But it took me more than 30 minutes, somewhere between 45 minutes to an hour, to actually lay out everything that I wanted my virtual assistant to do, so that she knew how to do it and what the expected outcome was and all of those things. So it actually took me more time to do the delegation than it would have if I had just done it myself. So think about this, guys. I spent 45 minutes to an hour figuring out how to tell her what to do, and then she still had to take the time to do it, and I paid her to do that. But guess what? Next time I need her to do that, I'm not going to have to explain shit. I just get to hand it over to her, and Sarah will take care of it. So sometimes we really do have to tell ourselves and practice delegating when it's not super important, when it's not emergency, you need it, so that the next time that you need it, that's when you actually gain time. That's when you get a return on that delegation. And then the next time, and the next time, and the next time. I mean, you usually only have to delegate something once. Now, the one thing that I will say, though, is after you've outsourced, after you've delegated, guys, communication is so important. You cannot expect to just hand something to someone and them get it 100% the first time. If they didn't do what you expected, you have to tell them. You have to explain what the difference is between what they did and what you expected, because I guarantee you, after you do that, the second time, the third time you ask them to do it. I mean, when it came to editing photos, I used to joke around. Every time I got a new editor, I am sure that the people at the image salon hated me, because every time I got a new editor for the first 3 to 4 sessions, I would send them back feedback. Like, they would give me the gallery and I would go through it. If it took me more than 10 minutes to correct anything, I would pick a few, I would tell them what I wanted, and I would send it back. But then by the third or the fourth time, I didn't have to tweak shit. Like, they would give me the gallery, and I was like, okay, I can just upload this to the set to the client and be done. Like, that's where you want to get, but it takes work to get there. It's not immediate.
Yeah. People give up on it, I think, too quickly, where they're like, I'll just do it myself. I'll just do it myself. I'll just do it myself. But it does take, it's a muscle. It's a muscle that you have to flex, and you learn how to give better instructions. You learn how to have better SOPs. You learn all the things. And that was how I built my business. It was mostly just like piecemeal outsourcing to contractors. And then it took me 6 years to hire my first full-time employee. And like, I still only have one full-time employee. And people always ask, how do you do it? And I'm like, because I still outsource piecemeal to people.
Yeah, and I don't have a full-time employee yet.
Saves me money. It's great. And you also know what they're doing. There's like a work product, so you aren't dealing with that question that always nags in the back of your head when you have somebody that's employed, which is, what am I paying them for? What are they doing with their time? And my full-time employee is my sister, so she's like my identical twin. So I know she's always working really hard and is amazing. But yeah, I love this conversation because it's how you have a life.
Yes. You can't have a life if you're doing everything. You can't grow your business if you're doing everything. And also, I mean, and I don't want to be a negative Nancy. I've already told you guys I ended up on 6 weeks of bed rest in the hospital. But then I lost my eyesight for 6 weeks. Like, guys, shit happens to me. And so, like, what happens with my next medical emergency? I mean, this is constantly in the back of my head. I have tried to make it to where if something happens to me and I am incapacitated, like I have processes and procedures in place so that at the very least, the people who are on my team can finish the projects that are currently in progress. I mean, it's so important. I know none of us like to think about, well, if something happens to you, but guys, when you own a business, you should be thinking about what happens if something happens to you. Like, absolutely.
Oh, especially if you're relying significantly on the income that you're bringing in. You have to have a backup plan, because if you don't, you are totally screwed.
Yes.
I know we don't want to think about dying or being incapacitated or having something horrible happen, but it's good to plan for the worst case scenario.
I call it my break glass in case of emergency.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's the other key, though, in the outsourcing, in the delegation. I think, at least in the photography world, I can't think of a more apt example for like general entrepreneurs. But as photographers, I always like give that side eye. Have you seen that the song, the audio on Instagram, side eye? I mean, that's what I do when I hear of a photographer trying to outsource their editing for the first time in September. That shit makes no sense. Like, you are in the thick of it. You are about to have so many more sessions than you have the rest of the year. And now is the time that you choose to try to outsource your editing. It's going to come back wrong. You're going to have to give them feedback. So yes, in that case, it really would probably behoove you to just do it yourself, because you do not have the time and capacity to send it back, to give the feedback, to give more information. That's why you should be practicing your delegation and your outsourcing way before you absolutely need it. So like winter, guys, is when you should be practicing your delegation.
Yeah, if you have a seasonal market, your downtimes are where you should be practicing your delegation 100%. Go to the delegation gym and start working on your delegation biceps. It's an arm day, leg day, I don't know, back day, whatever. All right, so we talked about people and how you can bring people into your business to have a life. Let's talk about systems and automation, because that's actually one of my favorites too. I love computers. And yes, if I can make a Zap for it, I'm making a Zap.
I mean, you know, we're in the land of like AI now. And what I do for Dubsado is not AI. I mean, it's not artificial intelligence, guys, but it is you figuring out the processes in your business that can be automated. And I joke around that like the most bang for your buck isn't software. The most bang for your buck is actually templates. Like writing your email templates, making your proposal, your quote templates. That is actually like what you have to do before you even think about the software and the tools. And a lot of people jump headfirst into the tools and they're like, okay, but this is not really working. And I'm like, okay, but do you even know what you want it to do? Like, do you have your systems mapped out? That's why every single one of like my Dubsado or Honeybook setups starts with a 3 to 4 hour strategy call, guys. And people think it's absolutely bananas, but I'm like, no, I need to know everything about your business in order to tell you what I think you should be doing with your clients and how we can maximize automations within that system. But if you don't have any systems, if you don't have any templates, like I can't help you. I mean, I can help you create them, but I mean, I can't help you if all you want to do is jump into the software and you have no earthly idea what you want the software to do, and you're not willing to take the time to think about the processes and the systems first. I mean, I tell this story all the time, but I was at Disneyland, one single Dumbo ride. I really need to like time it so that I know how long it was. But I got a paid notification for a client that I had sent a proposal to the day before. I got an automatic payment of like one of my membership clients. And then someone filled out a client questionnaire, all while I was on one single ride of Dumbo. That's 3 things that I didn't have to take care of, that I didn't have to do anything for. And it was taken care of while I was enjoying a Dumbo ride with my daughter. And so as much as you can automate, as much as you can create these systems, you can start to claim time back from your business from tasks that you yourself don't need to be doing.
Absolutely. Amen. And it starts with being an organized human who knows what your process is. Mm-hmm. Like, you have to have a process. If you don't have a process, you can't automate and you can't really use technology in an effective way. And I think that's a massive mistake. So I love that you do the strategy session with clients because it literally is a strategy. So many entrepreneurs have the like bright, shiny object syndrome of like, oh my gosh, this technology sounds like amazing. It's going to solve every problem I've ever had. And then they just never use it because they don't actually understand what problem they're solving. So yeah, I'm with you. It's like automation systems, game changer, but you have to understand what that technology or what that automation or what that workflow, like whatever you're doing, how is it taking something off of your plate that you're currently doing and making it so efficient.
And I like to tell people we all have processes, even if you don't have very deep processes. Like in your mind, you know that when someone fills out your contact form, that you have to talk to them in some way,
right.
Either a consultation call, an email, sending them the actual offer. So for a lot of times I just get them to talk about their business and I'm telling them what their process is just by listening to what they're telling me. And they're like, oh, that's really good. And then I'm like, okay, so this is what you're doing currently. This is what I would suggest that you add on to it or some other additional touch points for your client. And then they all think I'm magical. And I'm like, this is not magic. Like, this is what you're telling me that you're doing. These are the things that I'm suggesting. But like at the end of the day, it is your business. And so it has to work for you. I don't want to take what I think everyone should do for their business and tell you this is what you should do and then just implement it. Because then it really is like wearing clothes that don't fit you. It's like wearing things that you wouldn't, want. It does have to feel like you, which is why you are a very important part of the process building, systems area. Like I can't do it without you.
The other added bonus is that it provides such a great client experience that it results in repeat business and referral business. And people refer when they know that you're going to take great care of whoever you're sending their way. And so when you have systems and consistency, that is a sign that you are an amazing service provider and that they feel so comfortable sending everyone to you. So I find that when businesses have amazing systems, great client communication, very consistent communication or consistent experience, they blow up. You get to a point where you are so popular and so in demand that you can either start hiring additional people to serve your clients, or you can start outsourcing or raise your prices. Like it's like this snowball effect that is created by like first just making sure you have a life.
Mm-hmm. Consistency is such an important part. And I feel like that's the part that we gloss over, because the part of the Dumbo story that I often don't tell is when I got that client questionnaire, I couldn't even remember which client it was and when their session was. Like, my systems make sure that I don't drop the ball, on the onboarding process. That is what saves me. Like half the time, I swear the older that I get, Lindsay, the less my brain works. And so like the systems and the automations keep me on top of all of my clients so that I am not using all of my brain capacity in order to remember silly things like, oh, this client has a session in 3 weeks. Let me run into their project and manually send them this client questionnaire, which is something that Dubsado can do for me, without me having to do anything, which is just amazing.
So, do you have a book that changed your life?
I told you not to ask me this. I don't read anymore. I know that sounds really sad, but
no, honestly, I'm with you on like reading. I don't have time. It's not my eyes. It's just time. I'm like, I'm a podcast girl. So do you have a podcast that you like listening to?
I mean, I Love System saved me. I also love Jerisha Hawk. So like every Thursday when I'm driving my kid to art, those are the two first podcasts that I put on so that I can listen to them on the drive. I mean, I'm not a religious person, but Jerisha talking feels like I'm in church. It feels like a sermon. And she's one of those people, we were saying this before we started recording, but like she is one of those people that I can tell is 100% off the cuff when she is doing her podcasting. And I love that because when I can feel that people are like flowing with their words and they're not reading them to me, I find it so much more engaging. And like, I promise by the time I get to Chloe's art school on Thursdays, like I have ideas. I have something that I need to do inside of my business, just from listening to whatever podcast I was listening to on the way there.
Oh, that's why I love podcasts. I always get something that I'm like, oh, yeah. It's good inspiration, keeps the creative juices flowing. What is your one key to joyful entrepreneurship?
Oh, I just think managing your calendar. I mean, I know I keep on harping on this. I really hope that everyone listening hears how many times I've said your calendar and does it. Because I will go on, if it's a Disney, we're not going every month anymore, but if it is a Disney month, I have made sure that I have blocked off that entire week on my calendar so that no one sneaks on. Because before I started protecting my calendar, I had that a few times. I would look on my calendar and I'm like, oh my God, somebody scheduled a consultation call. What? So I would send them a little note that's like, hey, I'm actually going to be at Disneyland. I would really appreciate it if we could move your call to, this, whatever. And everybody was accommodating. But protecting your calendar and setting your boundaries, it is really what is going to bring you a joyful life. And I guess the other part is if there's any goal that you have that brings you joy, for example, my Disneyland Magic Pass. I mean, guys, I spent a mortgage every month to go to Disneyland. I mean, it wasn't cheap, but what I did was that was my goal. Mm-hmm. And so when I made my goals for the month of how many clients I wanted to help, what I wanted my revenue to be, I'm of course accounting for that money that I plan on spending to go to Disney inside of my goals. And so, it just became part of my business process when I'm setting my goals and I'm figuring out if I met my goals. That was really helpful because then it's I didn't have to really sacrifice anything to go to Disney because I had already made it to where I was pushing myself to earn at least that much more money than I would have in order to pay for Disney guilt-free.
That's what I call life first business planning, which is you work backwards. You start with what do you want to do, and then you figure out how much money you need to do all of it. And it's motivating.
It is very motivating.
All right, this has been so fun. How can people find you and engage with you and stalk you?
Well, if you feel like you've loved listening to me and you want to hear more, you can find me on Business First Creatives Podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. In terms of my services, my website is coliejames.com. That's ColieJames.com. And I'm also on Instagram. Sometimes you'll catch me in the stories, but otherwise it is my amazing virtual assistant putting out all of that content for you to consume. I mean, I am the one that answers in the DMs and in the comments, but Sarah uses Metricool to schedule all of that out for you so that I don't accidentally forget to post on Instagram for a week, which has happened, prior to Sarah doing that.
Well, thank God you have Sarah.
Yes.
And thank you for all this inspiration on how we can live more free and joyfully and have a life first business.
Yes, ma'am.
Before I let you go, I wanted to let you know that I have a 5-day Spark Joy Challenge, and it is totally free, available on my website. You can go to joyfulpreneur.link/podcast. The link is also in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening to the Joyfulpreneur podcast. Remember to check the show notes for all the links and resources mentioned in this episode. Your reviews also mean the world to me. If you're enjoying the podcast, please leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Until next time, stay joyful.